Empaths who were not emotionally protected as children develop these traits. Empaths who were not emotionally protected as children often grow up with an unusual depth of awareness. But that awareness came at a cost. As children, they didn't have the luxury of feeling safe inside their own emotions. Instead of being comforted, guided, or emotionally defended, they were often left to figure it out alone. They learned very early that emotions were not something to be expressed freely, but something to be managed carefully. This doesn't create weakness, it creates hyper-perception. These children become emotional weather stations, constantly scanning the environment for shifts in mood, tension, or danger. Their empathy isn't just compassion, it's survival intelligence. They didn't develop sensitivity because they wanted to. They developed it because they had to. One of the most common traits these empaths develop is emotional hypervigilance. They can sense when someone is upset before a word is spoken. They notice changes in tone, posture, silence, and energy that others completely miss. As children, this skill kept them safe. If a parent was overwhelmed, unpredictable, emotionally absent, or volatile, the empath child learned to read the room to avoid conflict or emotional abandonment. The problem is that this skill doesn't turn off in adulthood. These empaths often feel tense in calm situations, waiting for the emotional drop they've been conditioned to expect. Peace feels unfamiliar, and stability can even feel boring or suspicious, because chaos was the environment where their awareness made sense. Another trait that forms is chronic self-blame. Empaths who weren't emotionally protected often believe, on a subconscious level, that other people's emotions are their responsibility. When something goes wrong, they automatically look inward. What did I do? What did I miss? How could I have handled that better? As children, they may have been blamed for adult emotions or ignored when they needed reassurance. Over time, they internalize the idea that harmony depends on them. This makes them incredibly considerate partners, friends, and caregivers, but it also makes them vulnerable to manipulation, guilt, and emotional exhaustion. They apologize too quickly, over-explain their intentions, and feel uncomfortable taking up emotional space. These empaths also tend to develop a deep fear of being too much. They were often emotionally intense children, curious, sensitive, expressive, but without protection, that intensity may have been dismissed, minimized, or criticized. So they learn to shrink. They learn to soften their voice, suppress their needs, and edit their feelings to make others comfortable. As adults, they struggle to ask for help without guilt. They may crave closeness but feel ashamed of needing it. This creates an internal contradiction. They give emotional safety to everyone else, yet feel undeserving of it themselves. They become the listener, the supporter, the emotional anchor, while quietly starving for the same care. A powerful but painful trait is emotional overfunctioning. These empaths don't just feel deeply, they do deeply. They anticipate needs before they're expressed. They fix problems that aren't theirs. They step in where others fall short. This often earns them praise for being strong, mature, or selfless. But inside, it's driven by an old fear. If I don't hold this together, everything will fall apart. As children, they may have had to emotionally parent themselves, or even their caregivers. That role doesn't disappear with age. It simply migrates into relationships, workplaces, and friendships. They attract people who take more than they give, not because they're weak, but because they're capable. Another defining trait is difficulty trusting emotional consistency. Empaths who weren't protected often grew up with love that felt conditional, unpredictable, or emotionally distant. As a result, they struggle to relax into secure bonds. When someone is warm one day and distant the next, it feels familiar, even comforting. But when someone is steady, available, and emotionally present, it can feel unsettling. These empaths may unconsciously test relationships, waiting for the moment when care disappears. They don't do this because they enjoy pain. They do it because their nervous system was shaped by inconsistency. Stability is something they must learn, not something they naturally expect. They also develop a strong internal world. Because external emotional safety was unreliable, they learned to retreat inward. Many empaths who lacked protection as children are deeply reflective, imaginative, and philosophical. They think about meaning, patterns, psychology, and human behavior. Solitude feels both comforting and lonely. They can spend hours inside their thoughts, processing emotions that were never acknowledged out loud. This inner depth is a gift, but without healing, it can turn into rumination, overthinking, and emotional isolation. They may feel deeply understood by no one, even when surrounded by people. One of the most misunderstood traits is their attraction to emotionally unavailable partners. This isn't about low self-worth, it's about familiarity. An emotionally distant partner recreates the emotional landscape of childhood, where connection had to be earned, decoded, or waited for. These empaths often believe that if they can finally make this person stay, open up, or choose them, it will rewrite the past. But what they're really chasing is emotional repair. Unfortunately, this pattern keeps them stuck in relationships where they give more than they receive, hoping love will eventually become safe. Despite all of this, empaths who weren't emotionally protected develop extraordinary emotional resilience. They survive experiences that would break others. They can sit with discomfort, grief, and complexity without shutting down. They understand pain without becoming cruel. And when they finally learn to protect themselves the way no one did before, something remarkable happens. Their empathy stops being a wound and becomes wisdom. They begin to set boundaries not out of anger but out of self-respect. They choose connection that feels calm instead of chaotic. They stop explaining their worth and start honoring it. Healing for these empaths doesn't mean becoming less sensitive, it means becoming selective. It means realizing that empathy without boundaries is self-abandonment. It means learning that protection isn't selfish, it's necessary. When an empath who lacked protection finally learns to emotionally parent themselves, they don't lose their depth. They gain peace. And in that peace, they become not just deeply feeling humans, but grounded, powerful ones who no longer confuse love with survival.